Dragi telespectatori, pentru ediția de astăzi a emisiunii Puterea rugăciunii v-am pregătit o înregistrare specială pe care am primit-o de la cei care au făcut această înregistrare la conferința de media creștină organizată în Statele Unite în februarie acestui an. Acolo a fost o dimineață specială dedicată Israelului, a problematicii Israelului în contextul acesta al conexiunii Israelului cu lumea creștină, cu creștinătatea, cu valorile Scripturii. Și am selectat au fost mai mulți vorbitori, dar am ales această prezentare a lui Jurgen Buhler, care este președintele International Christian Embassy din Ierusalim, este ambasada creștină a creștinilor din Ierusalim, traducerea în limba română a organizației creștine cu sediu în Ierusalim. Jurgen este creștin născut din nou de naționalitate germană, care locuiește în Ierusalim, în Israel, de mulți ani de zile și este președintele acestei organizații internaționale prin care foarte mulți creștini ajută Israelul în diverse moduri și feluri. Iar ei acolo, pe teren, să zic, sunt mâinile și picioarele pentru foarte mulți creștini din lumea întreagă care doresc să se implice în Israel într-o formă sau alta. Așadar, Jurgen, care are o viață foarte strâns legată de Domnul, care cunoaște realitatea Scripturii într-un mod deosebit și care cunoaște realitatea spirituală din Israel, a avut această prelegere deosebită care ne-a impactat profund pe toți cei care am fost prezenți acolo. Și prin bunăvoința organizatorilor am primit acest material pe care l-am subtitrat și l-am pregătit pentru dumneavoastră să-l urmărim împreună. Deci Jurgen Buhler de la Christian Embassy from Jerusalem, cu prezentarea pe care a făcut-o în februarie 2024 cu ocazia întâlnirii oamenilor de media creștini din lumea întreagă din Statele Unite.
I want to talk today about the changing world after October 7. And just to recapitulate very briefly what happened on that morning, I was this morning we were planning, my wife and I, to celebrate the 50th birthday of our daughter, Yaeli. And my wife was preparing a cake for her when the sirens were ringing and all the family need to come into our bomb shelter in our home, and we were celebrating the 50th birthday of our daughter in the bomb shelter where we were staying for more than half an hour, which is unusual for Jerusalem. We very quickly realized something is happening. I honestly didn't believe all the reports yet. When we saw terrorists driving in cars going through Sderot, I believe there is something wrong. I don't believe those news. This is fake news again. But as the day was going on, we all realized that something very, very horrible was taking place on that day. More than 3,000 terrorists infiltrated Israel, murdering, mutilating, doing the most brutal things to more than 1,200 people that were brutally killed. A rabbi said, don't call this that they behaved like animals, because no animal would behave like those terrorists behaved on that day. Thousands more civilians came over after the terrorists. They were looting. They came over from Gaza. Elderly people on donkeys, people on bicycles, people on pickup trucks. They drove over from Gaza into those Jewish communities, looting what they could take, and even more horrible, civilians were taking hostages back to Gaza. On the streets of Ramallah and other Palestinian villages, candies were handed out to celebrate this victory. And victory celebrations were taking place all over the Middle East in many Arab cities. At the same time, in the Gaza envelope communities, it was sheer chaos. I remember calling my friend Sheikh Harmesh, a former member of Knesset. and asked Shai, how are you doing? And I will never forget his frantic call on the phone. He said, Jurgen, where is the IDF? I'm at the bomb shelter. They are shooting outside our civilians. He was the head of that community. Where is the IDF? Where is the IDF? I called him 2 more times and I got the same reply from him. Within 48 hours, the first pro-Hamas demonstrations were taking place in many streets and capitals of the world, with sometimes hundreds of thousands shouting what we just heard this morning so many times, from the river to the sea. And Israel mobilized on that day an army of 350,000 reservists that were added to the more than 200 soldiers of the standing army that Israel has. Tzaf Shmone, that's how it is called, the order number 8 was commissioned to 350 soldiers. Our boy received his, 2 boys received their Tzaf Shmone. It means you drop everything and you run immediately to the army collection point, wherever they call you to go to. The amazing thing on that morning was that more people showed up for the recruiting of the army than actually were called in. The whole nation was mobilized if they were called up or not, and even elderly people came. The oldest reservist that was showing up at the base was 80-year-old with his gun. He said, I'm ready to fight. And around the world, soldiers who were on holidays or Israelis who were working here in America or Australia, they dropped everything. They took their families, put them in airplanes, and they returned back to Eretz Israel to stand with their nation. They didn't have to do this, but we saw Israel united on that day like never before. Israel was at war. Israel was united, and all the legal reforms and everything was forgotten, and you saw a nation united like I can't remember in the 30 years I was living in Israel. October 7 became a game changer for Israel. Many Israelis, in particular on the left and extreme left, they lost every trust to live in peace with the Palestinian and Arab neighbors. You need to understand that the Gaza envelope communities, those communities who were attacked, they were not this, what you might have in your mind, this typical settler image of people with kippahs and maybe leaning to some kind of radicalism. They were very liberal, leftist people. They wanted to show the Israeli population it is possible to live with your neighbors in peace. And I just want to mention one person. His name is Dov Lipman, a personal friend of mine. He was the head of the communities of the Sha'ar HaNegev Regional Council. And he was telling me personally his great vision and dream he had for the community in Gaza. He was building a plan of many billions of dollars to provide work for 10 to 20,000 Gazan citizens, to expose them to the high tech of Israel, to build up industrial cities and communities on the Gaza envelope that they can live in peace and prosperity in their own community in Gaza. I tried to reach him on October 7 in the morning. I called him. His line was already dead, and he was the first casualty in that morning, the man who was giving his whole life vision to live in peace with the people of Gaza. Our friend Anat, Barry knows her very well. You could find her on every Peace Now demonstration, willing to make any compromise to the Palestinians. We saw her the other day, and she says, Jurgen, I don't believe in any peace anymore. I don't want to see any Palestinians anymore. We don't know what will happen after the war is over, but Israel for sure is moving in a significant way to a more conservative Israel. Israel also lost their trust in the army. We were on October 5 in Gaza. We had the Feast of Tabernacles. 700 of our delegates visited those communities around Gaza. It was an amazing time. Our people were telling me, say, Jurgen, we really felt the presence of God there. Little did we know that 36 hours later, those very streets would be killing fields where hundreds and thousands of Israelis would be killed. And General Amir, our friend Josh helped me. He was a brigadier general of the IDF. He was telling us, and it really touched me. He says, our motto is not by power, not by might, he says, but that's what we believe in the army, but by the Spirit of our God. On October 7, Israel lost their trust in the leading echelon of the IDF. It was exactly on the day 50 years after Yom Kippur War, when exactly the same scenario in Israel repeated itself again. Warnings were ignored that an imminent attack is coming to Israel. And I don't know, in arrogance or trusting in their own strength, everything was done wrong that could have done right and saved many lives in that morning. And while they lose their trust in the higher echelon of the IDF, there is a new trust in the IDF which is quite remarkable. I never forget a video of just 2 months ago, put together by 3 or 4 high-ranking, well-known army generals of the IDF, and they were standing there and they said, we apologize to the young generation. He says, we called you the TikTok soldiers. We called you the chocolate bar soldiers because of you were spoiled by your parents. And he says, we have today to apologize to you because you are fighting more brave than we were doing when we were in the battlefield. I want to tell you, there is an amazing generation of young heroes growing up here in Israel. Roughly 500,000 soldiers are serving right now in the IDF. I'm also very glad to tell you that among those 500,000 soldiers, there are around 800 Messianic soldiers that are serving right now in the IDF, risking their lives. And also, there are 100 approximately soldiers like our boys, Gentiles, who are living in the land and who are willing voluntarily to serve the nation of Israel because they consider it their land. As a matter of fact, one of the first casualties in October was David Ratzner. He's part, I believe, Pastor Israel Pochta is here from Ashdod. He's part of his Kehillah, the best friend of his son. He left his life in a heroic way, killing many terrorists on his tank until he, as the last soldier of his unit, brutally was murdered by Hamas. Or Uriah Bayer, the son of German parents who are serving in the 3rd generation in Israel, was one of the first Gentile victims that fell a victim of this terrorism. Right now there are, as we are speaking, 217 soldiers who got killed by Hamas since Israel invaded Gaza, and 552 soldiers were killed, including October 7. And I would like to ask you all just to stand for a minute to recognize the sacrifice of these great heroes of Israel. We are witnessing right now, please be seated, miracles in Israel, I can truly say, of biblical proportions. Once this war is over, you will hear one miracle story after the other. Let me just give you one story that my son was telling me. He said, Daddy, in his unit where he was growing, where he's serving, Some of our guys were there, one got injured and the medic came. He was trained not as a combat soldier, but as a medic. He went in on October 7, was treating one of the soldiers, bandaged him. Outside, terrorists were shooting, and this medic took the gun and ran out and faced those terrorists, and he, this trained medic, not a combat soldier, killed 15 terrorists that morning. Another story of 5 heroes, war-proven men in their 40s. They decided, they were not called up, but they decided to go down to Gaza, and those 5 men killed 50 terrorists on October 7. My son is telling me, whenever he comes home, he says, "Daddy, either Hamas is really, they are the worst shooters in the universe, or God is protecting us. I should be dead," he said so many times, but God keeps me alive. God is working there. Israel also became more religious. And I want to show you a little video that my wife just sent me a few moments ago. And what you're going to hear is the singing of the tent in my son's unit just a few days before they entered into Gaza. The song they are believing, you will not understand it, it's in Hebrew. We are believing, we are believing. We don't have anyone to trust except our Father, our Father that is in heaven. Please have a look. Isn't that amazing? Let me show you another film. And this is inside Gaza, another tent of Israeli soldier. The artist, some of you might know him, Eyal Golan, he's singing, "May Israel live, through all the good and the bad times, even in the most difficult hours. The blessed one of Israel is watching over us. Who will come against us? We don't have any other land." Remember that, Ein Eretz Acheret. And he will make peace among us, and he will watch over our children. Please have a look. And please note, this is not a Pentecostal worship gathering, but this is in an army camp in the midst of Gaza. My son was telling me when he entered his unit, which by the way is the Dut Hamishim, it's the unit that Moti Gur was leading to liberate Jerusalem. And he was telling me when I joined the army, maybe 10% of our soldiers, he said, they are praying. When he came back from Gaza, he says, "Daddy, it's reversed now. Maybe 10% are not praying. 90% are praying today." The synagogues in Israel are full. And we see the nation is turning towards their God. I want to add one more point. This war also can be a game changer for Gaza. I want to show you an image. You might be disturbed if you can please put it up. This is not Gaza City. This is the city of Dresden. And I know many of you are disturbed when you see the destruction of Gaza. My father always told me, he says, "Jurgen, we have to be thankful what America did to our nation. They brought us on our knees in order to eradicate every form of Nazism and Hitlerism in Germany." And I believe, honestly, Gaza is on the footstep of one of the greatest opportunities of their history. Gaza needs a Marshall Plan. And let me add something Gaza needs today, and I'm talking to Christian leaders today. We are praying at the ICJ every day that God would release 4,000 missionaries to Gaza to preach the gospel of Jesus Christ. That's the only hope for the people in Gaza today. When I was with the Prime Minister, I told him, don't leave Gaza ever. Invite Christians to come in, build schools, build hospitals, that they can educate a new generation like America did it 75 years ago in my country. We are today the most stable democracy in Europe, and I believe the same can happen also to that. And to our Israeli friends, you might say, well, we don't really like missionaries. Rabbi Benny Elon, he came to me some time ago. He was still alive, one of the great leaders. He said, Jurgen, I have one favor to ask you. Please send more missionaries to the Arab world. I asked, why would you as a rabbi ask that? He said, it's simple. If they believe what you believe, we will have peace in the Middle East. And finally, in this last few seconds, these events of October 7, they need to be a game changer for the church. Let me be very frank this morning. It is not enough anymore to say we love Israel or we stand with Israel. We need actions today. We need the church to stand up and pray for Israel like never before. If you are a pastor today, I plead with you, I beg you, please don't allow a Sunday service to pass without praying for Israel in your church. If you are a radio host, a TV host, please make sure as often as possible pray for the people of Israel. Number 2, act. There are right now 240 evacuees that are staying in hotels from Otef Asa, from the north. They need your help. Israel needs more bomb shelters. They need more ambulances of Magen David Adom. They need to rebuild their community. Israel needs every help they can get. Please do as often as you can. Collect an offering in your church to stand with Israel. Don't just confess your solidarity, but become very practical. And I want to invite you to contact our branch here in the United States. We are working on so many levels with Israeli officials to help. And lastly, please speak up. I'm very concerned that in our Christian countries and nations, more Muslims are on the streets demonstrating against Israel than Christians who are standing up for Israel. Help us to reverse that. Help us that Israel sees they have friends all over the world. Talk to your government people in the Congress or in the Senate and be an ambassador for Israel. We need to show Israel today, like never before, that we are standing on their side.
Am urmărit această înregistrare cu Jurgen Buhler, care cred că va impacta și pe dumneavoastră, cum ne-a impactat și pe noi toți. El spunea că are 2 fii care sunt în armată, deși nefiind cetățeani israeliani, ci având doar drept de ședere, fiii lui nu au obligația să slujească în armata israeliană, dar au ales să facă voluntariat. Deci au înțeles profund nevoia de implicare și au înțeles profund și dreptul moral al evreilor de a se apăra de această teroare groasnică a terorismului radical Hamas islamic. Și aș vrea să rămânem cu gândurile acestea, chiar dacă poate mulți dintre dumneavoastră, uitându-vă pe mediile laice care au alt mesaj vis-a-vis de situația din Israel, poate vi s-a, să zic, înmuiat inima într-un mod emoțional. Sigur că este și de partea palestiniană suferință și sunt probleme mari acolo, dar din câte știu și din toate rapoartele pe care noi le primim din surse serioase, armata israeliană care luptă în fâșia Gaza au foarte mare grijă de populația locală, de civili, ca să nu-i afecteze, îi evacuează, le asigură condiții de evacuare, îi ajută cu resurse ca să poată să supraviețuiască în aceste condiții dure de conflict deschis care e pe teritoriul fâșiei Gaza. Dar să nu uităm că sursa acestui conflict este prezența masivă a Hamasului în Gaza, care a folosit toate resursele trimise spre ajutorarea populației civile de acolo, le-a folosit pentru construcția de tuneluri. Știm că sunt sute de tuneluri construite sub fâșia Gaza, au fost descoperite în nenumărate locuri. În majoritatea cazurilor, pe lângă case de civili, lângă grădinițe, lângă școli, acolo sunt gurile de acces spre tuneluri și spitalele au fost folosite ca baze de operare ale terorismului islamic. Deci Israelul este într-o situație extrem de complexă acum și de dificilă. Să ne rugăm pentru pacea Ierusalimului, cum spuneam, să ne rugăm pentru Israel într-un mod insistent. Sunt tot mai amenințați și din nord. Ei se așteaptă la un atac masiv din nord, spre mâna armată a Iranului, care folosește Hezbollahul din nord, de pe teritoriul Libanului, al Siriei, să atace Israelul, așa cum tot Iranul este în spatele grupării teroriste Hamas din fâșia Gaza. Deci marea confruntare este între Israel și Iran, de fapt, prin interpușii Iranului care se mișcă în zona teritorială imediată din vecinătatea Israelului, în nord, cum spuneam, în Liban și în fâșia Gaza. Dar Israelul nu are prieteni nici măcar de jur împrejur și celelalte națiuni nu sunt poate direct ostile, dar nu îi sunt prietene. Iar pe de altă parte, din ceea ce constatăm, tot mai multe state îl lasă pe Israel tot mai singur. Am văzut că tocmai a fost votată o rezoluție la ONU și prin care s-a cerut încetarea conflictului din Gaza în dreptul Israelului ca el să-și oprească să oprească războiul din Gaza, cum i s-a cerut Israelului. De fapt, ar însemna ca Israelul să redevină o țintă pentru Hamas, pentru că Hamasul se va reorganiza rapid pe acel teritoriu și vor ataca din nou Israelul. Israelul nu va face acest lucru, nu poate opri acest război acum, trebuie să termine ceea ce a început și va termina cu ajutorul lui Dumnezeu ceea ce a început, adică eradicarea Hamasului din fâșia Gaza. Și haideți să ne rugăm pentru ca Domnul să îi ajute pe evrei în vremurile acestea de mare cumpănă pentru ei toți, pentru că sunt într-o situație foarte critică și tot mai critică. În continuare să ne rugăm ca România să fie o țară care să stea de partea Israelului și să stăm cu ei în rugăciune, în post, pentru ca planul lui Dumnezeu să împlinească cu Israelul, ca România să nu fie o țară în care să-și ridice capul antisemitismul. Mulțumim Domnului pentru această lege prin care s-a consemnat și se vrea celebrarea prieteniei româno-israeliene în fiecare 14 mai, când este data oficială de naștere a statului Israel, care s-a născut în 14 mai 1948. Așadar, este partea noastră ca și creștini să înțelegem vremurile, să ne rugăm conform Scripturii și nu conform știrilor laice care încearcă să aducă o altă lumină și o altă înțelegere a realității spirituale care există de fapt. Știm că cel rău încearcă din răsputeri să dezinformeze, să răstălmăcească, să umbrească adevărurile care sunt în Scriptură și haideți să fim oameni care stăm de partea Scripturii în toată această rugăciune și stare de rugăciune noastră pentru Israel. Dumnezeu să vă binecuvinteze și să binecuvinteze Israelul.